Chapter 5 Crimson Tides, the Crimson Empire, and the final purge of the Imperial Guard. The galaxy had endured the grand campaigns of Thrawn, survived the terrifying return of Palpatine, and seen the light of the Jedi rekindled. Yet, peace remained a distant dream, a whisper on the galactic winds. For even in death, the Emperor's influence lingered, not just in the dark side, but in the echoes of his personal power, specifically within the ranks of his most elite, its most loyal servants, the Imperial Royal Guard. These crimson-clad warriors, chosen for their unwavering devotion and exceptional combat prowess, were the living symbols of Palpatine's iron rule. With his final demise, a profound schism tore through their ranks, leading to a bloody, honor-bound conflict that would stain the galaxy red once more when the Emperor fell, presumably for the final time during the events surrounding the Dark Empire. A handful of his royal guards were not at his side. They had been on assignments, overseeing critical Imperial operations or protecting key assets. Among these survivors were two prominent figures, Kir Kanos and Karna Jax. Both were exceptional warriors, steeped in the strict doctrines and brutal training of the Royal Guard. Their loyalty had been absolute, forged in the fires of discipline and indoctrination. But now, without their master, their paths diverged violently. The core of the Imperial Royal Guard schism was a clash of ideology and honor. Karna Jax, the Emperor's death meant a power vacuum to be exploited. Cox believed that the Guard's true loyalty was not to Palpatine's ghost, to the perpetuation of the Imperial ideal, even if it meant seizing control through cunning and betrayal. He saw an opportunity to purge what he considered to be the weak and to reshape the Imperial remnant in his own image, consolidating power under a new, ruthless authority. He gathered loyalists who shared his vision, aiming to destroy any who clung to the old, now defunct, chain of command. Kir Kanos, however, was driven by a profoundly different, more ancient code of honor. For him, the Emperor's personal guard meant absolute, unyielding loyalty until the last breath. The Emperor was dead, and in his eyes, any attempt to usurp his authority or betray his final wishes, even from within the Guard itself, was the ultimate dishonor. He believed that the only honorable path was to avenge the Emperor's death and to eliminate anyone who claimed to be the Emperor's successor without true legitimacy, or worse, who betrayed the very essence of the Guard's sacred oaths. Him, Karna Jax, was not a leader, but a traitor to their sacred order. This ideological divide ignited a brutal, covert war within the remnants of the Imperial Royal Guard. What had once been the Emperor's ultimate weapon became a self-consuming fire. Assassinations, desperate duels, and pitched battles erupted in secret locations across the galaxy as former comrades turned their crimson blades against one another. This was not a war for territory or resources, but a deeply personal, visceral conflict driven by conflicting interpretations of honor and loyalty. It was a final, bloody purge of the Emperor's most loyal elite, the New Republic, still grappling with its own internal challenges and the lingering threats of other Imperial warlords. Watched this internecine conflict with a mix of apprehension and cautious optimism, while the infighting weakened Imperial power generally. The sheer lethality of the Royal Guards made any direct intervention exceedingly dangerous. They understood that these warriors, even in their fractured state, were among the most dangerous individuals in the galaxy. Their unique skills and fanatical devotion meant that their struggle, though internal, had galactic implications. The outcome of this bloody schism would determine what kind of Imperial threat, if any, might emerge from the shadows of the Emperor's final legacy. Leia Organa Solo, now a mother to the young Jedi twins, Shaken and Jaina, found herself at the heart of this renewed conflict. She had always been a leader, a senator, a diplomat, but now her burgeoning connection to the Force became paramount. She embraced her Jedi heritage, training under her brother's initial guidance, and later honing her skills in the crucible of war. Her unique position, balancing her political duties with her growing force abilities, made her a crucial figure in the fight against the reborn emperor. She was a beacon of hope, fighting not just for a government, but for the future of her children and the galaxy. The climax of the Dark Empire conflict came with a desperate confrontation on Bias. Luke, having played his dangerous game of deception, had learned much about Palpatine's secrets and weaknesses. He had endured unspeakable temptations, battled his own inner demons, and walked a razor's edge between light and dark. His apparent fall had allowed him to gain insights that no loyal Jedi could have achieved. Yet, the price was almost too high. He struggled to maintain his true self amidst the overwhelming influence of the dark side. It was Leia who ultimately brought about the redemption of Luke Skywalker. Confronting her brother, she appealed to the light within him, reminding him of his true purpose and his love for his friends and family. Her unwavering faith, her refusal to believe in his genuine fall, helped him to break free from Palpatine's mental grip. The Skywalker siblings, united in the Force, stood against the resurrected Emperor. Their combined efforts, along with the sacrifice of others and the timely intervention of Han Solo, led to the final death of Palpatine. In a desperate moment, Luke and Leia channeled the light side of the Force, overwhelming Palpatine's current clone body. The Emperor's spirit, attempting another essence transfer into the infant Anakin Solo, was thwarted by Han, who shot the intended clone vessel. Palpatine's consciousness, unable to find a new host, was irrevocably shattered, consumed by the Force itself. This time, the death felt final, absolute, a true end to his reign of terror. However, Keena's return had left lasting scars and spawned new, dangerous offshoots of his dark empire. The Emperor's Shadow Guard and other elite forces, fanatically loyal to the reborn Palpatine, continued to operate even after his final demise. These were not just stormtroopers. They were Force-sensitive enforcers, dark-side adepts, technologically augmented warriors who carried out the Emperor's will with chilling efficiency. They hunted down Jedi, suppressed dissent, and attempted to continue the brutal legacy of their master. Their presence ensured the shadow of Palpatine would linger for years to come. It's a constant reminder of the dark side's resilience. Leia's role as a leader evolved profoundly during this era. Not only did she embrace her Jedi destiny, but she also solidified her position as a central figure in the New Republic's political landscape. She became a powerful advocate for peace and stability, using her Jedi insights to guide her diplomatic efforts. Her compassion and strength inspired a galaxy that had been plunged into despair. She understood that defeating Palpatine was not merely a military victory, but a spiritual one, requiring a deep commitment to the light and to the values of justice and freedom. The Dark Empire conflict forced the New Republic to confront the true nature of evil. It taught them that death was not always the end, that some forms of darkness could transcend even that finality. It highlighted the terrifying power of the dark side and the immense responsibility that came with wielding the Force. The galaxy learned that eternal vigilance was required, and that the struggle between light and shadow was a constant, evolving conflict. The events reshaped the lives of the Skywalker and Solo families, deepening their commitment to the Jedi path and solidifying their roles as guardians of the fragile peace they had fought so hard to establish. The threat of the Emperor had been neutralized, but the lessons of his return would forever echo through the Force, a grim warning against complacency. This brutal internal conflict among the Royal Guard would become known to history as the events encompassed by the Crimson Empire. It was a narrative of vengeance, survival, and the profound, often tragic, meaning of loyalty in a galaxy without its absolute ruler. Kir Kanos, a solitary figure driven by his strict code, relentlessly pursued Carnajox, viewing his former comrade as the ultimate betrayer. His quest for vengeance led him through the darkest corners of the Imperial underworld, exposing layers of corruption and ambition that had festered within the Empire's highest ranks long before its fall. The duels between Kanos and Jocks were legendary, showcases of unparalleled combat skill. Each warrior, a master of the Force-infused fighting style unique to the Royal Guard. Their conflict was a testament to the fact that even without a throne, the legacy of a tyrant could still fuel devastating wars. Meanwhile, beyond the internal struggles of the Royal Guard, Galaxy continued to contend with the rise of other powerful warlord factions, each attempting to fill the immense vacuum left by Palpatine's death. Among the most prominent and dangerous was Admiral Dala, a brilliant but ruthless strategist. Dala had been frozen in stasis by Grand Moff Tarkin prior to the Galactic Civil War, only to be unfrozen decades later. She emerged with an intact, powerful fleet and a singular, terrifying vision to restore the Empire through overwhelming military might and brutal efficiency. She launched devastating raids against New Republic targets, demonstrating a terrifying capacity for destruction and a complete disregard for civilian casualties. Her relentless attacks often caught the New Republic off guard, reminding them that the Imperial threat was far from over, in contrast to Dala's brute force approach. Another figure, Grand Admiral Gillet Pellaeon, emerged as a voice of reason and pragmatism within the fragmented Imperial remnant. Pellaeon was a seasoned veteran, loyal to the ideal of the Empire, but not blinded by fanaticism. He recognized the futility of the constant infighting among warlords and the diminishing returns of brutal, uncoordinated attacks against the growing New Republic. He understood that for the Empire to survive in any meaningful form, it needed unity, discipline, and a coherent strategy. His efforts to unify the Empire were arduous and often met with fierce resistance from power-hungry rivals. He believed in strategic retreats, resource management, and long-term planning, stark contrast to the reckless abandon of many warlords. The attempts to unify the Empire were fraught with betrayal and internal strife. Warlords like Zinj and Delvardis continued to operate independently, their ambitions often clashing with each other as much as with the New Republic. Pellaeon found himself fighting a two-front war against the New Republic and against the chaos within his own ranks. He painstakingly worked to gather what remained of the legitimate Imperial fleet, to restore discipline, and to establish a chain of command that transcended individual egos. He brokered fragile alliances and leveraged his immense tactical experience to defeat or neutralize rival Imperial commanders who refused to cooperate. His vision was a unified, smaller, but stronger Imperial force, capable of enduring in a galaxy now dominated by the New Republic. A defining moment in Pellaeon's campaign for Imperial unity was the Battle of Verinda. This was a pivotal engagement, where Pellaeon demonstrated his strategic brilliance, outmaneuvering a combined force of New Republic and rogue Imperial elements. He utilized classic Imperial tactics, adapted with subtle innovations, to achieve a decisive victory that solidified his position as the de facto leader of the cohesive Imperial remnant. The battle was a stark demonstration that Imperial military might, when wielded by a truly capable commander, was still a formidable force. It sent a clear message to both the New Republic and the squabbling warlords. Pellaeon was a force to be reckoned with, capable of bringing order to the chaos. The successful consolidation under Gillet Pellaeon eventually led to a slow, almost imperceptible shift in the nature of the galactic conflict. The constant, brutal warfare that had plagued the galaxy since Ender began to abate. Kayon, recognizing the limits of the Imperial remnant's resources and the strength of the established New Republic, initiated a series of diplomatic overtures. These were not acts of surrender, but pragmatic efforts to establish a lasting peace, or at least a stable coexistence with their former enemies. He understood that continued endless war would only lead to the utter destruction of what little remained of the Empire. This culminated in the gradual truce between the Empire and New Republic. It was a long, painstaking process, fraught with mistrust and the echoes of decades of bloodshed. Leia Organa Solo, with her unparalleled diplomatic skills and her commitment to healing the galaxy, played a crucial role in these negotiations. She recognized the necessity of ending the perpetual conflict and saw the potential for a stable, albeit uneasy, peace with a unified and rational Imperial remnant under Pellaeon's command. This was not a victory for the Empire, but an acknowledgement of its continued existence as a diminished but defined political entity. The truce was codified in the Pellaeon-Gavrisum Accords, a series of agreements that established clear borders, disarmament protocols for certain weapons, and a framework for future diplomatic relations. The Imperial remnant under Pellaeon ceded vast swaths of territory, acknowledged the New Republic's sovereignty, and agreed to significant limitations on its military power. In return, the New Republic recognized the Imperial remnant as a legitimate, if small, power and agreed to cease aggressive military action against its defined borders. This landmark agreement brought an official end to the Galactic Civil War, though localized conflicts and lingering resentment would persist. For years, the crimson tides of vengeance and loyalty had finally receded, leaving behind a new, uneasy landscape. The Royal Guard's internal purge, the rise of Daala's destructive campaigns, and Pellaeon's pragmatic unification had all contributed to this new reality. The galaxy had learned a bitter lesson that even the shadows of tyrants carried legacies of vengeance, and that the fight for peace was a continuous, evolving struggle, sometimes requiring reconciliation with former enemies. The era of the Grand Admirals and the Emperor's direct agents was drawing to a close, placed by a more stable, albeit still tense, dynamic between the New Republic and the disciplined, but vastly diminished Imperial remnant. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a generation, the main antagonists of the Galactic Civil War had laid down their arms. Chapter 6: The New Sith Order. Dark Side Cults in the Shadow of the Past. The galaxy had collectively breathed a sigh of relief. The tyrannical grip of the Empire had been broken. The strategic genius of Thrawn had been defeated, and even the horrifying return of Emperor Palpatine had been definitively ended. A fragile peace had blossomed, allowing the New Republic to steadily consolidate its power and the fledgling Jedi Order to begin its quiet rebuilding. Yet, the dark side of the Force, a primordial, corrosive energy, doesn't simply vanish with the death of its most powerful proponents. Like a noxious gas, it seeped into the vacuum left by the Emperor's demise, manifesting in new, insidious forms. This period saw the rise of diverse dark side cults, desperate individuals seeking power in the Force's shadows, and the chilling, whispered reemergence of what some would call a new Sith order. Born not from a lineage, but from a terrifying hunger for ancient power. The very concept of the Sith had been thought utterly destroyed with the deaths of Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine. The ancient prophecy of the Rule of Two, where only two Sith Lords could exist at any given time, had supposedly ensured their ultimate self-destruction. But the vastness of the galaxy harbored forgotten secrets, long dormant evil, and countless individuals susceptible to the dark side's seductive whispers. With the Galactic Empire fragmented and the New Republic still finding its footing, no unified power was left to systematically hunt down and eradicate every lingering tendril of darkness. This allowed various dark side traditions, some genuinely ancient, others newly formed from fanaticism and opportunism, to emerge from the deepest shadows. These new dark side threats were not unified under a single Grand Master like Palpatine. Instead, they were fragmented, disparate, often competing cults and individuals, each drawing from different interpretations of ancient Sith lore, or simply driven by raw ambition. They saw power not through a cohesive military machine, but through the Force itself, through forbidden rituals, and through the discovery of long-lost artifacts in forgotten Sith worlds. Their methods were often subtle, infiltrating local governments, corrupting disillusioned individuals, preying on the fears and anxieties of a galaxy weary from decades of war. One of the most notable manifestations of this resurgent darkness were the disciples of Ragnos' dark side cult, operating in the period following the Emperor's final death. Obsessed with the ancient Sith Lord Markaragnos, one of the most powerful and ruthless Sith Lords of the ancient Sith Empire. The disciples believed that by performing dark rituals and gathering potent Sith artifacts, they could somehow resurrect the spirit of Markaragnos and unleash his power upon the galaxy. Their fervent belief in this resurrection led them to undertake daring and dangerous missions, raiding archaeological sites and clashing with Force sensitives loyal to the light. Their fanaticism was absolute, and their disregard for life chilling. As they sacrificed countless beings in their dark rituals, the remnants of the Empire, though officially in a truce with the New Republic under Grand Admiral Gillet Pelion, still harbored many dark-side adepts who had served Palpatine not as Sith Lords, but as powerful Force-sensitive agents or enforcers. These individuals, often called Imperial Darksiders, found themselves adrift without their Emperor, but many retained their dark side abilities and their inherent cruelty. Some sought to continue Palpatine's legacy in their own twisted ways. Others simply reveled in the power they possessed. They represented a continued insidious threat, often operating as independent warlords or manipulating local conflicts for their own gain, constantly testing the New Republic's resolve and the Jedi's vigilance. The Jedi Order, still in its nascent stages under Grand Master Luke Skywalker, found itself uniquely challenged by these new manifestations of the dark side. Unlike the overt military threats of the Empire or Thrawn, these cults often operated in secrecy, their influence spreading like a disease. Clute and his few students, including early members like Kype, Durin, and Karanhorn, were tasked not just with training new Jedi, but with discerning and confronting these subtle, insidious threats. They had to learn to operate as peacekeepers and investigators, rather than just warriors. The Force, which had once been a clear beacon against the Empire, now seemed murkier, its dark side currents flowing from many different, unexpected sources. The return of a truly organized dark side philosophy, even if fragmented, represented a critical shift. While not adhering to the rule of two, these groups collectively contributed to the perception of a new Sith order. By their aggressive pursuit of dark side power and their often violent rejection of Jedi ideals, unearthed ancient Sith holocrons delved into forbidden knowledge and sought to replicate the destructive power that had once fueled the ancient Sith empires. Their actions often led to horrific atrocities, demonstrating the corrupting influence of unchecked dark side power. The Jedi struggle against the disciples of Ragnos, for instance, often involved intense confrontations over ancient artifacts. These artifacts, imbued with the dark side energy of long-dead Sith Lords, posed a grave danger to any Force-sensitive, light or dark. The Jedi found themselves in a race against time, attempting to secure these relics before they could be used to unleash unimaginable power or corrupt innocent populations. These missions were perilous, often requiring the nascent Jedi Knights to face their own inner demons and resist the insidious allure of the dark side. Adding to the complexity was the lingering influence of ancient Sith spirits and malevolent Force entities. The Force itself, still scarred by the immense conflict of the Galactic Civil War and the Emperor's dark reign, allowed these echoes of past evil to cling to existence. One such entity, the spirit of Exar Kun, an ancient Sith Lord from millennia past, continued to haunt the temples on the moon of Yavin 4, the very site of Luke Skywalker's Jedi Praxium. This spirit had previously influenced Kype Durin, demonstrating the profound danger of such lingering dark side presences. The Jedi had to learn not only to combat living Darksiders, but also to cleanse locations corrupted by ancient evil, a testament to the enduring power of the Force, even beyond life and death. The presence of these diverse dark side cults also exploited weaknesses within the New Republic's fledgling political structure. Some cults gained influence by offering false promises of power or stability to desperate local leaders. Others used their dark side abilities for manipulation, sowing discord and distrust within otherwise peaceful communities. This meant the Jedi often had to work hand in hand with New Republic intelligence agencies, combining Force insights with traditional investigative methods to uncover and neutralize these hidden threats. It was a complex and often frustrating process, as the very existence of Force users remained a mystery to many in the government. The concept of a true, unified new Sith Order was debated by galactic historians and Force scholars for years to come. While these various dark side groups never fully coalesced under a single, uncontested Dark Lord, their collective emergence presented a new, multifaceted threat to the galaxy's fragile peace. They were a chaotic, unpredictable force, driven by individual ambition rather than a cohesive, grand plan. This made them difficult to track, difficult to understand, and often extremely difficult to defeat. Each cult, each Darksider, presented a unique challenge, requiring the Jedi to adapt their approach and temper their tactics. Luke Skywalker, as Grand Master, understood that the best defense against these new dark side cults was not just military might, but the continued rebuilding of the Jedi Order and the fostering of hope and understanding across the galaxy. He emphasized compassion, patience, and the importance of preventing individuals from falling to the dark side in the first place. He believed that the lessons learned from his own struggle with the dark side and that of his father, Anakin Skywalker, were paramount. The new Jedi were taught to confront the darkness within themselves before attempting to combat it in others, focusing on inner balance and emotional control as their primary weapons. The confrontations with these dark side cults were often intense and morally complex. The Jedi were not dealing with the clear-cut villains of the Empire, but with individuals who were often misguided, desperate, or simply seeking power in a galaxy still recovering from profound trauma. There were instances where Jedi attempted to redeem fallen Darksiders, just as Luke had redeemed his father, though not always successfully. These efforts underscored the new Jedi Order's commitment to compassion and understanding, moving beyond the more rigid and sometimes unforgiving doctrines of the old order. The period of these new, dark side threats solidified the Jedi's role within the New Republic. They became the galaxy's primary defense against the subtle incursions of the dark side, operating where conventional military forces could not. They served as spiritual guides, moral compasses, and protectors against existential threats that originated not from fleets, but from the insidious corruption of the Force itself. This era forced the New Republic to acknowledge the vital importance of the Jedi, not just as symbols of a bygone era, but as essential guardians of galactic stability. The shadow of the past is in the form of ancient Sith power and a lingering presence of Palpatine's influence continued to cast a long pall over the galaxy. This constant struggle against emerging dark side threats underscored a fundamental truth. The Force seeks balance, and even in times of supposed light, the dark side will always find a way to manifest. The New Republic and the Jedi Order learned that eternal vigilance was not just a military concept, but a spiritual one. The galaxy was not just recovering from a war. It was in a perpetual state of balancing the scales of the Force. This period of internal dark side threats prepared the galaxy in a grim and unexpected way for the next, even greater challenge that would emerge from beyond their known stars.